Dr. Ram Sharan Mahat is considered to be a rare combination of political and technocratic backgrounds. One section of the society believes that he is the mastermind of the private sector economic reforms in Nepal, while the other criticize him for his policy of privatization and liberalization of the economy. He is also considered to be a leader who defends his reforms. He has authored 2 books in defense of democracy and Trial, Tremors and Hope, the political economy of contemporary Nepal, where he has defended his reforms agenda. It is a pleasure to have with me the former Minister of Foreign Affairs and the former Finance Minister of Nepal, Dr. Ram Sharan Mahat. Dr. Mahat, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Dr. Mahat, having a conversation with you and not bringing up the 1990s reform agenda is not possible. So I would like to start with that. With benefit of hindsight, what do you feel you overemphasized during those reforms in 1990s and the areas you underemphasized?
In 1990, there was a political change in Nepal in favor of multi-party democracy, liberal democracy. So when there was the first elected government in 1991, led by Nepali Congress, it was a Nepali Congress government led by Girija Prasad Koirala. So we started a new economic policy to modernize the economy, Since it was a liberal democracy, so economic policy also should be liberal. Liberalization of politics is not sufficient, liberalization of economy also is necessary. So we started a liberal economic policy, which means that all sections of the society, all parts of the country must be utilized to bring best outcome for the country, to contribute for the country's economic development.
Right.
So the liberalization policy had to covered private capital, private entrepreneurship, domestic capital, and international investment and domestic investment, and at the same time not just the private sector but also non-government NGO sector, and also give more space to cooperative sector and community sector. So all parts, all sections of the society, various should be involved in economic development depending on where they contribute, depending on the areas where they contribute, they must be encouraged. And the governments also should concentrate on areas, where its role is very important. It can contribute more, like the social development, education sector, health sector, similarly infrastructure sector, environmental improvement, and these are the law and order, and all these are the responsibilities of the government. So government should be concentrated in areas where it can contribute most. Similarly, on entrepreneurship, you must encourage, you must promote private sector, both domestic capital and foreign capital. Similarly, in poverty alleviation and other, in uplifting the living conditions of the low income groups, we also enacted new law liberalizing the cooperative society. Similarly, to encourage the non-government sector also, non-government sector, NGOs, domestic NGOs and international NGOs, new laws were introduced. So as a result of that, and also privatization, they said the government run enterprises, if they are creating huge domestic burden, instead of creating initially when government started to start industries, one of the rationale behind that was you can make profit while running in the industries. Right. The profit will go to the national treasury. which can be spent, for the benefit of the people. But instead of that, most of the enterprises, most of the industries run by the industries was creating huge burden on the economy. They were making huge losses. So this must be transferred to the private sector through open competitive bidding. It is not just Nepal's example. It happened throughout the world, even in communist countries which believed in nationalization and socialization of the means of production. Everything was government owned. They started privatization. About 50,000-60,000 industries, enterprises were privatized in Soviet Union, Russia, and also in China, in other countries also which believed in socialism, like UK, which was under the liberal, Labour Party, which believed in socialism. Indian government also, Congress also believed in socialism. They also started privatizing industries which were involving huge loss, which were creating huge loss to the economy. So Nepal also started, and these areas were open to private sector. As a result of that, government revenue increased. As a result of more investment from the private sector in the economy, government started collecting more taxes, more government revenue. When we were we created the first we announced the first budget in 1991, the total revenue of the government, annual revenue of the government was 12 billion rupees. Now, as a result of the economic policies introduced in the 1990s, open policy, now more than 1,000 billion revenue is collected in the country. So as a result of which you can spend more now in the social sector, in infrastructure development, and also as a result of the income opportunity, employment opportunities also been expanded. As a result of this, there was, one of the objectives of the government in those days is to reduce poverty, reduce poverty in the country. Poverty alleviation was one of the objectives of our planning in those days. As a result of which now, population living under poverty alleviation declined a lot. Around 49% of the total population was in the country in 1991 was below poverty line. Now it has gone down to around 15-16%. So that is one good area. In the education and social sector also, Nepal made very good progress in infrastructure also. You had a total of 7,000 kilometers of road in the country in 1990, including improved road and including just kacha. Now it is more than 90,000, and only 9% of the population had access to electricity in those days. Now it is more than 90% have access. So in every sector, education, health, infrastructure, and poverty alleviation, Nepal made very good progress. In a report, global report, in 2010. In 2010, as you are aware, there is annual Human Development Report published by United Nations. In 2010, Nepal was chosen as one of the 10 developing countries, low-income countries in the world, which made very good progress in the social sector, and one of the 3 in Asian countries, making very good progress, despite very abnormal condition, because Nepal was suffering in a huge way for a decade because of Maoist insurgency has caused lots of losses in the country. Nepal was in a very difficult position. even under such difficult condition, Nepal made good progress in social sector, in education, health, social development and rural development. So there was appreciation by the international community also for the
The reforms that were
for the outcome resulting from the reforms we introduced in the 1990s.
So, in spirit of the same reforms that were initiated in the 1990s, what would you prioritize today in this post-pandemic 21st century?
In these days, I think what is necessary in the last few years, last few years, I see some problems announced by the government. They make sky flying targets. They announce huge targets, very ambitious targets, with very limited capacity to implement them. Artificial type, most of the aims and targets they announce look very artificial because they cannot be implemented. They cannot be implemented. And also there is huge budget deficit. They make very huge, they announce very big budget which cannot be implemented.
That was actually the next.
And also the expenses is more on non-productive sector, on current expenditure, non-productive sector, current expenditure. And they rely more on deficit financing, as a result of which Nepal's national borrowing is increasing. When I left, when I left the finance ministry 5 years ago, at that time the outstanding national borrowing, outstanding national credit, internal and external credit, national credit was around 25.65%, little more than 25%, less than 26% of the GDP. Our total outstanding credit was less than 26% of the GDP, 25 point something. Now it has gone up to 38%. National borrowing has increased a lot, with huge burden, with increasing burden being created to future generations. And this is not, the huge expenditure is largely on, administrative expenditure.
Unproductive sectors that you mentioned, yes. But why do you think that our borrowing keeps increasing so much, but the budget that comes year after year from the ministry, if you look at the development budget, we are never really able to spend all of it, Why do you think that happens? What are the bottlenecks for that?
Because you must emphasize on institution building, so that they can they have the capacity to implement the government programs to achieve the targets announced by the government. Right. So institution building is very important. At the moment we have three levels of government, three layers of government. So they have different mandates. There is overlapping and duplication between functions because of excessive centralization of the at the federal level. So you have problems. Also there is even lot of debate and conflict between levels of government, between governments regarding their authority.
Because on paper, if you really look, Nepal is a fantastic country that brings out great policies, like you mentioned sometimes, policies that aim to reach sky high. But when we look at the implementation part, there's really nothing that we can applaud.
Because there is lack of quality governance in Nepal. There is lack of good governance. So to improve the quality of governance, you must strengthen the institution building at various levels of government, at various departments. There must also be reorganization and restructuring of the administrative expenditure. There is duplication and overlapping of authorities at various levels, at different levels, as a result of which you are recruiting more people, more than necessary persons in the administration. The current government itself, when they started their government about 3 years ago, they had announced a administrative review commission. The administrative review commission also has made very good recommendations to streamline the administrative structure. They had said central government should have limited number of ministries, because many of the functions which have been empowered to regional to provincial governments and local governments, the central government is taking over. So 6 ministries must be merged, must be reduced.
Right.
And
so that there's no
36
duplication.
departments must be reduced, and hundreds of various committees, so-called development committees, must also be merged or reduced. So reducing the administrative structure, to streamline the administrative structure, they have made various recommendations. But the government is not doing that, implementing that. Although they announced that they will be executed, they will be implemented, but they have not taken any step. Instead of that, they are creating more and more offices, favoring their own persons with politicization. So the administrative structure also is not based on meritocracy. There is too much of instability in the administrative structure also. There is frequent changes and transfer of staff without giving them some continuity in a minimum level of stability. So there is lack of, and also in terms of appointment also at the administration and at the constitutional bodies, they favor their people more affiliated with their party. because appointment depends more on partisan affiliation rather than merit. So because of this quality also, institutions are very weak. And institution building is not taking place. Institutions, what is necessary at the moment is strengthening the institutions at all levels, and also at various in various departments and sections, which is not happening at the moment.
We've discussed on the policy level, but to come to a more pragmatic level, the threat of the pandemic just seems to be deepening, with the second wave now coming to countries all over the world, including Nepal. In this situation, what do you think the government and private sector, how should they work together to save the economy from collapsing?
Naturally, the government should be naturally giving more emphasis in the health sector, to strengthen the health infrastructure, to improve the quality of health infrastructure, at various levels. That is necessary. And also at the moment, what is necessary is corona vaccine. So ensure corona vaccine to all people. That is very necessary. So that is one aspect. So emphasis on the health sector. So whatever weaknesses, limitations are there in the health sector, they must be improved. There must be emphasis on that. And at the same time, economic, at the same time, relief and restoration of the economy. Relief for the real poor without who have lost their jobs, lost their employment, and are in very bad shape. So there must be relief for those people, those unemployed people without any sources of income. So there must be support for them, and at the same, and also there must be emphasis on economic policy, and measures must be implemented to revive the economy. The social distancing norms are necessary. So those economic activities which can be economic activities
that
which
can be done with social
implemented,
distancing,
while
maintaining social distance.
Overall lockdown is not necessary, but lockdown partially it may be necessary to maintain social distancing. So based on social distancing, while maintaining social distancing, if economic activities can take place, they must be permitted.
We all know that the budget is now being revealed in a month's time. As a former finance minister, what do you think are the aspects, the areas that should be highlighted? Because every time around the budget comes, the Nepalese people, the private sector, everybody really looks forward to that, in hoping that it'll bring changes in policies and plans that will boost the economy of the country.
Well, the details can be discussed, but generally, in simple terms, what I want to say, the budget should be emphasis. This should focus on sustainable development, in addressing the problems the country is facing, not populist. The government is more has a tendency to focus more on populist activities, spending more on distributive expenditure, rather than creating more and more economic opportunities, income generation opportunities, so that there is more employment. At the same time, there will be economic revival. So the emphasis should be on more sustainable development, rather than populism, to get more votes. And also, there is huge deficit. There is more emphasis. The expenditure on current expenditure and administrative expenditure must be reduced, which is increasing at a very high level at the moment. So there is more, emphasis on capital expenditure, and the capital expenditure must be efficiently implemented. There must be proper expenditure management and proper overall management. Wherever the government is making investment, the capital investment from the public sector must be managed efficiently with high returns. At the moment, Nepal's capital output ratio, marginal capital output ratio is incremental capital ratio is very high. So there must be more emphasis on, efficiency, so that, public expenditure can generate more outcome. So there must be efficient utilization in the capital. At the moment, the capital expenditure is, even the announcement of capital expenditure, capital expenditure is very low at the moment. Recurrent expenditure is about 66% of the GDP. Capital expenditure is around, as budgeted, is about 23-24% only. Even that is not spent. Because of poor capacity. At the same time, whatever is spent is not spent efficiently, with proper outcome. So there is overcapitalization of capital expenditure, overcosting of development activities, which creates lots of leakage and corruption in developmental projects.
So, Dr. Mahat, you're also a rare combination of economics and politics. Now, coming to this connection between politics and economics, you're also at the forefront of the economic policy developments of Nepali Congress as well. what, according to you, makes Nepali Congress stand out in terms of economic policies compared to other political parties?
What is necessary? Proper management capacity in this country. What is necessary is improvement, serious improvement in the management capacity, in both expenditure capacity and overall government capacity. So the emphasis should be on improving the quality of governance at every level,
That is what the focus of
Yeah.
Nepali Congress also. So coming towards the end of our conversation here, I just want, the last question that we want to conclude with is, if you could just take a time and envision a better Nepal without any restrictions in the next 10 years' time, how do you envision a better Nepal?
Nepal has lots of comparative advantages. We have comparative advantages. We must be able to take advantages of those. Our agriculture potential is very high. Similarly, the potential of our water resources capacity is very high. Similarly, our tourism potential is very high, and there are other sectors also. We must take the best advantage of them with proper management, with proper allocation of resources, and with proper management. And by creating proper capacity, implementation capacity, institutional capacity, away from partisan affiliation, must be based on bureaucracy. The emphasis should be more, the purpose should be more on overall development of the country, overall returns out of the investment, rather than favoring our own persons, and rather than partisan affiliation.
So if you could envision a Nepal, you would envision a Nepal.
In our administration, in our management, we must rise above partisan affiliation.
So you'd envision a Nepal where opportunities are given to the people that are best suited for the job rather than their...
Exactly, yeah, that's right.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mahat, for taking your time out and talking to us. Thank you very much.